Hey everyone, Corey from aquariumcoop.com. Today I want to talk about my top 5 foods for bettas. We all know they can kind of be tricky eaters. A lot of times a betta is a new gateway fish. We maybe haven't kept fish before and that type of thing. So knowing what works well, I think is helpful. So first we should know they're basically hardcore carnivores. They would eat lots of insects, that type of thing. So we want a lot of meaty foods. The number one food that I can recommend is frozen bloodworms. Now, I wouldn't feed them like a whole cube or anything like that. You're gonna wanna thaw maybe a whole cube and then keep it in the fridge and just feed them a few worms, maybe a pipette. But you can't only feed frozen bloodworms. You'd wanna have a variety. So it's best, in my opinion, to have 2 or 3 foods you're feeding and kind of rotate through them so that way they're getting all their vitamins and they don't become reliant on just one thing. That can be a little bit dangerous. All right, the second thing, might even be the first thing, would be live foods. That might be like live mosquito larvae or something like that, but what you can buy is live blackworms. And these blackworms are alive. I'll put some in this tank, and the goal is that they live in the substrate. Because they're a true aquatic worm, they live there, they'll live in the gravel, and your betta will hunt it like it would in the wild. So these are great if you're going on vacation. You're like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be gone for like a week or 4 days. You put a portion of live blackworms in the tank, and they will live there, and they can hunt them. Now, yes, could you maybe bring in some parasites and that kind of stuff? Technically, that's a possibility, but this food is so good for them that I totally think it's worth it. And just make sure you're getting a good clean source from your local fish store or something like that. They shouldn't stink, they shouldn't look dirty, they should be just worms. And as you saw, I fed, that came right out of our fridge, and they should be kept in a fridge, by the way, and should be nice and clean. Now the next thing I would recommend keeping on hand, like let's say you had both of those, I would do a pellet. And I really like the Ocean Nutrition Betta pellets. You get a little scoop with them, that type of thing, and in general it's a nice floating pellet, rounds it out. Yeah, there's some fillers in it and that kind of stuff, but the bettas like to eat it. Comes in a small enough container that if you only own one betta, this food won't go super stale before you feed it out. A lot of people buy a big container and then they've been feeding their betta for 2-3 years with it, and they're wondering why it doesn't want to eat anymore. Well, just like we wouldn't want to have a cereal box that's been open for 2 or 3 years, they don't like it either. It gets stale, doesn't taste very good. Next up, freeze-dried foods. This right here is the Aquarium Co-op freeze-dried bloodworms. You could use anyone's freeze-dried bloodworms. The good thing about the freeze-dried is that they float on top. So they'll go up and eat them, and you can portion control very easily, net any out that aren't being eaten within 5 minutes or so. They're kind of slow eaters. But freeze-dried bloodworms and brine shrimp would both be good ones. And I think, the good news is all of these foods pretty much will feed a ton of different varieties of fish. So if you have a 10-gallon tank with a betta and some neon tetras or something like that, it's all good. The last one would be another kind of generic pellet. Now this is the Aquarium Co-op pellet. It's made with lots of brine shrimp in it. Some people go, oh, my betta doesn't like to eat it. Some people say, oh, it loves it. And most bettas are going to be that way. It's kind of like owning a dog or a cat. You know how they only want to eat certain brands? You got to kind of test it out. The good news about this floating pellet, high quality, you get a lot of it for your money. Something like this is 10 bucks, and it'll feed a lot of tetras and angelfish. And like if you have 5 fish tanks, this is a really good buy because you can feed more than just bettas. You can feed almost any community fish. So those are the 5 foods I feed here in the store. We keep lots of bettas. We keep all of our bettas in community tanks with other stuff, and so they get a little bit of snacking on everything. But those are my go-to 5 foods for your bettas.